Hi, good morning. Today I want to talk about some insurance issues. I am going to be talking about travel insurance, not the other kinds of insurance. So this is specifically for travel. I'm going on a trip soon and I have some insurance and I just wanted to talk about that. I have heard some people talk about how they have their credit card covering their trip and they think that that is enough. And it probably is enough if nothing happens. But I want to tell you a story first, and then I'll explain why I have two different kinds of insurance for my trip. Now, in my area recently, there was a call out put on my Facebook page that came from a local medical group. This person and his wife had went on a cruise, and I think they were in the Caribbean somewhere, and he had a heart attack. And so there was a call out for people to donate money to get him back home. And they didn't have the money to pay for the emergency evacuation that was necessary to get him back home from the ship. And it was a very sad situation because everybody was outraged, saying it should be against the law. And I mean, they went on and on and on about it. And in my mind, it's like, well, maybe they had the travel insurance that they thought was going to cover that, but it does not. I've seen it before, and I even had a friend that thought she had the insurance. She called me crazy desperate. She was on a ship. She broke her arm. They wouldn't do anything but just give her a little bit of mild pain medication and basically kicked her off the ship and told her to, good luck. But this guy had a heart attack, so they couldn't just kick him off the ship. At least not where they were. They could have probably in another port. But anyway, so a bunch of people raised some money and got him shipped back home. So what this story tells me is that they didn't have emergency evacuation insurance. With emergency evacuation insurance, you have a certain amount that they will pay for your medical expenses and then another amount that they will pay for your transportation back home. And I think there's a couple of other little expenses in there that they cover as well. I picked a plan that pays up to $25,000 for medical expenses and up to $100,000 for emergency evacuation back home. But my plan that I have is global. So anywhere I go in the world, it covers that. And it's also for an entire year. So if I take a trip today, if I take a trip next month, if I take a trip 6 months from now, it's covered. And the reason I bought an annual plan like that is because it was very inexpensive. It was less than $150. If you want higher threshold plans, like if you wanted $50,000 medical or $200,000 trip or whatever, it would go up depending on those kind of things. And the other part about the reason I bought it annually is because I've been buying annual travel insurance for several years because a job I had a few years ago required me to do a lot of travel. It was, within the United States, but anywhere I went, if I went to, Nebraska, Canada, Michigan, places like that are in the continental North America, it would cover to get me back home. And minor type, triage type medical care. Because without that, you're basically stuck wherever you are, and your own insurance usually won't do a whole lot for you. You end up usually having to get your own transport, even if your health insurance covers some of the cost. So I have that, and I also have my travel insurance for the trip. Now, a lot of people get those two mixed up. My travel insurance for the trip is based on each trip. So whenever I go on this trip, I'm going to be gone for 40 days. And that policy is only for that 40 days. And it only covers expenses. It doesn't cover something that's unknown. If I miss my flight, it will pay for the flight. If I don't go on the cruise ship, it will pay for that. If I lose my luggage or something breaks or I have to replace something, within certain exclusions, it will pay for those things. But it will not pay for medical care, and it will not pay for an emergency evacuation. So it's important for people to understand this because, like I said, some people have said that they have their credit card that covers everything. And while that may be true for some expenses, and it may be true up to a point, with some of the credit cards cover, some of the credit cards do cover a certain percentage of an emergency evacuation. I looked up one that's very popular. It's the Chase Sapphire Preserve, and it will cover up to $100,000 of a emergency evacuation in most cases, with exclusions like if you have a pre-existing condition and they determine that this emergency evacuation is due to that, they won't cover it. If your medical expenses, it maxes out, I believe, at $2,500. And if you have any other kind of insurance, it's considered secondary. So you would have to use whatever other insurance you have first, and then that would come into play. So what I encourage you to do is just look at your policy. If you have the credit card coverage, look at what your policy actually covers before you go on this trip, because you don't want to get out there in the middle of the Atlantic or over in Europe or wherever you're going, and then something really catastrophic happens, and then you call up the company and they say, oh, well, we don't cover you for that, or you'll have to talk to your health insurance policy for that, or they don't cover it at all. And the other part of it too is because I did have a travel credit card a few years ago, and I was under the same misconception because it was supposed to cover everything. And I'd never had to use it, thank goodness. But then, because it was great for rental cars, because if you had a wreck in a rental car, it would cover everything, it was supposedly. But the thing about that was that credit card was had an annual fee, and the annual fee was way more than what I would have paid for this annual policy. And combining with my trip insurance and the annual fee, combining the trip policy with the emergency evacuation policy was about the same amount of money as what my credit card fee was for that credit card. So I don't use that credit card for that because I just can't count on it. I just don't want to count on it for that. I think that is something they kind of give you in the beginning to draw you in to get that card. And then you're saying, well, I'm paying $600-700 a year for it. It's going to cover everything and you're good, but it doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't. So I would encourage you to look at your policy, regardless of where you got it from, and make sure that any of the exclusions that are with that policy, you are good with. Because if you don't have $100,000 to put out for an emergency evacuation home, you might be the one on Facebook or GoFundMe or whatever, trying to get back home, stuck somewhere, and they won't, and a lot of places, and another thing, a lot of places won't let you leave the hospital if they send you to a hospital. They won't let you leave until you pay that bill. So that's another thing you need to know as well. Anyway, I've gone on for a little too long, probably repeated myself, and I apologize for that. But I'm really excited to be going on this trip that's upcoming. But I'm not being unrealistic about it. So I hope you enjoyed this and maybe you got something out of it, and I will see you next time.